This is the Ethanol Report, the industry podcast from the Renewable Fuels Association since 2008. I'm Cindy Zimmerman. With a record corn crop and depressed farm prices, expanding access to 15% ethanol blended gasoline, which has a lower price point for consumers, just seems to be a no-brainer. But a new study from the National Corn Growers Association and the Renewable Fuels Association puts some real numbers on the impact it could have. I'm speaking with RFA Chief Economist Scott Richman, one of the economists who worked on the study. So, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about the study and what conclusions you came to?
Yeah, so we have shown over time that consumers will save as a result of E15. We've shown that quantitatively what they can save, and we've talked about the fact that if we get a substantial expansion or full adoption of E15 as a result of a legislative fix of being able to sell it year-round, that it would greatly benefit corn growers. But the crop production reports in August and then again within the last few days have shown what a large crop we're going to be producing this year. And so we decided that instead of just talking in general terms about E15 being able to benefit corn growers, we would go ahead and put some analysis behind that and actually show how much it would benefit corn growers as well as the rest of the U.S. economy. So I partnered with the economists from the National Corn Growers Association. We spent a few weeks diving deeply into the analysis, and what we showed was that if E15 were available permanently year-round, if you got full E15 adoption, that would add about $25 billion in U.S. GDP. It would generate an additional $10 billion in incomes to households, and it would support an additional 125,000 full-time equivalent jobs. So what it did was kind of quantify what the benefit to corn growers and to the U.S. economy would be. And I might mention that of those numbers about the economic contribution, roughly half of that would be in the corn sector itself. So this is coming at a time when we're going to have an absolutely mammoth crop, by far a record, and it's really needed by the corn growers who are facing some challenging economic times right now.
Well, yeah, talk a little bit about that, about what prices are looking at right now and how exactly this focusing especially on increasing consumption of ethanol will help consume that bigger corn crop.
Yeah, so it's going to be a massive corn crop. We're looking at a 16.8 billion bushel crop according to USDA. So well over a billion bushels over what we've previously experienced, and the market's just going to struggle to absorb that much additional corn. Um, that comes at the same time as market prices for corn are going down at a time significantly at a time when production costs for corn growers have not gone down anywhere close to that degree, and so they're feeling a lot of margin compression, even though certainly having a bumper crop is a good thing in a lot of ways. So we're looking at farm prices in the $4 range, and what this analysis did was to say, okay, you've got this set of circumstances right now, $4 corn, large corn crop. What would be the impact on ethanol usage, on corn usage, on corn prices if we were to have if we were to have full adoption of E15. And then we also looked at a case where instead of full adoption, you're looking at kind of an interim point on that path toward ramp up, where you've replaced about 10% of regular unleaded gasoline of E10 with E15, and what would be the impact of that. So if you got full adoption of E15 right now, in the United States, we consume a little over 14 billion gallons of ethanol. That would increase to about 21 billion gallons of ethanol. We consume a little bit over 5.6 billion bushels of corn to produce that ethanol. We'd consume an additional 2.4 billion bushels of corn under a full adoption scenario. And instead of having $4 corn, we'd have about $4.35 corn. So nearly a 10% increase over the status quo case. And so what we did was to trace that through exactly what it would mean for the economy, both in terms of output, in incomes, and importantly in jobs.
Well, you mentioned the stressors that are on farmers right now, the lower prices, higher input costs. And what about the export situation? Are corn growers looking at increasing exports or lowering exports? And is that also putting pressure on their supply situation?
Yeah, fortunately, corn growers are in a little bit different situation than soybean growers right now, even though some of them are the same folks. Soybean exports are really suffering right now. Corn exports are actually doing quite well, and USDA is forecasting that for the crop year that we just started, we're going to get record levels of corn exports, but it's just not enough. We can only put so much into exports, and right now, there's only so much that's going to go to feed, and with ethanol kind of somewhat limited in how much right now we can go over a 10% blend level. There's a question as to, even with solid export markets, where is all that corn going to grow? And if you look at other countries, India, for example, but even places like the UK and to some extent Canada, their ethanol blend rates have been increasing over time. Ours is artificially constrained by this archaic rule related to this artificial constraint related to how much to ethanol usage in conventional gasoline areas during the summertime. And if we were to have a pretty straightforward legislative fix of that, it could help out not only with ethanol consumption, but also with the situation that corn growers find themselves in.
Well, that legislative fix that you've been looking at is the nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act, which we've been trying to get through for several years, but this year looks more promising than ever. But tell us exactly what you talked about, these outdated provisions, but how would this act change things?
Right now, 10%, it's a little bit technical, but 10% ethanol blends are afforded a 1 pound vapor pressure waiver. Um, when that goes up to 15% ethanol blends, they do not have that 1 pound vapor pressure waiver in conventional gasoline areas, which is about 70% of the country during the summer months. So June 1st through September 15th. And there's really no reason for this. For the metric that people are concerned about, which has to do with smog, E15 is actually a little bit better on that front than E10 is. And so you've got this constraint that because of this provision, You can't use the same blend stock for E10 and E15 in conventional gasoline areas in the summer. Again, that's somewhat technical, but if legislation would just do a relatively easy fix for something that's common sense, what it would do is basically unleash E15 in the United States, put it on parity with E10 with regular unleaded gasoline, and let sales expand and take away a constraint that is always in the back of the minds of retailers when they're considering whether to offer E15. So uh, it's really it's an archaic rule. It's very technical, but the takeaway is that it's just a common sense provision to put E15 and E10 on the same footing that would allow for expanded sales of E15.
Well, and of course, it's generally accepted that this bill would not pass as a standalone piece of legislation, but have to be attached to some other legislation. And there are a couple of vehicles that are coming up this year. What do you see that might be the most promising?
Stepping back and looking at last year, we almost had this included, uh, this fix included in the continuing resolution to fund the government at the end of 2024. And there was a lot of legwork done at the time to convince members of Congress that this is something that's worthwhile, and to overcome any concerns about that. We wound up with, at the time, what was called a skinny continuing resolution. Didn't have provisions like this in it, but the groundwork that was done at the time to get support for this continues to pay off, and there's continued interest in DC to move forward with doing this. So fast forward almost a year, we've got now this huge corn crop, this by far record corn crop of what USDA most recently said is 16.8 billion bushels. At the same time, we've got the appropriations process that has to that has to move pretty quickly right now, and so there are prospects for including this in the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. It could get attached to that. Um, it looks increasingly likely that on for the main budget there will be a continuing resolution. It's unclear whether that's going to be a skinny-ish continuing resolution or whether something like this could work its way in. And then there are other legislative vehicles that are likely to move forward between now and the end of the year. So things are coming together to some extent. There's a confluence of timing, and we're cautiously optimistic about the prospects for being able to work this into legislation in the between now and the end of the year.
Let's talk about California. We just saw California legislature pass E15 for the state, the only state that does not allow sales of E15. Governor has not signed it yet, but what impact I mean, we could end up seeing sales of E15 in California before the end of the year. What impact could that have on the supply situation?
Yeah, and so that's another reason for optimism that if you get a combination of national E15, a legislative fix, and what's going on in California, that you could get a substantial pickup in consumption of E15. So in California, the legislature has passed provisions that are going to make E15. They're going to provide funding for the California Resources Board to finalize its rulemaking on E15 and make E15 a legal fuel out there in the interim, basically immediately. So California uses 1.3, 1.4 billion gallons of ethanol per year, 10% of the ethanol usage in the country. That would, in a full E15 adoption scenario, go to something over 2 billion gallons per year. So, in rough terms, 700 million gallons of ethanol. That's a very nice addition of a potential addition of ethanol out there. So, in addition to just the fact that California's got high gasoline prices, ethanol can help with that. There's other reasons to think that California would be a good market. We see what's gone on with E85 sales out there. They've increased in recent years, probably like no other state in the U.S. And part of that is because when you blend higher levels of biofuels, you get increased incentives toward the low carbon fuel standard. So when you combine the fact that California is fuel constrained, and especially with a couple of refineries possibly going dark out there, you combine fuel constraints, high gasoline prices, and LCFS credit value together, and actually reasons to think that that the storage tank situation, the compatibility of storage tanks with higher ethanol blends out there is quite favorable. California could be a very good market for fairly rapid increases in E15 consumption if all of these pieces continue to line up together. And so, in line with that, one of my colleagues, Robert White, is actually holding a series of workshops and is out in California as we speak. So we're doing everything we can to help promote E15 out in California.
And I understand that California doesn't fall under the same rules that impact the summertime sales of E15, right? They can sell E15 year round once it's passed.
Yeah, the vast majority of California gasoline is what's called reformulated gasoline, and so it doesn't fall under the same arcane restriction on E15 in conventional gasoline areas. So another thing that would kind of grease the skids on E15 in California.
Well, hopefully we won't have to worry about that by next summer. But that's all the specific questions I have. Scott, anything else you want to add?
No, it was a pleasure to work with our colleagues on the at the Corn Growers on this work. I think it's very substantive work, and I'd encourage everybody to look at the RFA website and take a peek at the work. It's fairly accessible to take a look at the results.
To find that report on the RFA website, go to ethanolrfa.org, drop down under Resources to Reports, Studies, and White Papers, and then click on RFA E15 Library. And it's the first item listed there. And I do encourage you to check it out. And that's it for this edition of the Ethanol Report. Thanks for listening.